The Jackson 5. That's right. Back in the day, it was the Jackson 5, even before it was the Jacksons, and obviously before Michael Jackson went on to a big solo career. Some of those songs are pretty darn good. Hey, it is about 12 minutes after 9 o'clock. Gina Thorne is with us here live, and she is with Lakeview Health, which is an amazing facility right here in Northeast Florida. A beautiful spot, a peaceful place that uses really cutting-edge techniques to help people achieve drug and alcohol recovery, recovery from addiction. And indeed, this is a... we had, just last week, Gina was asking me if we've had the sheriff, and we had the commander of the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office in here, as well as we had Sheriff Shore in here as well, and in the last 2 weeks. And both of them, when you ask them about drug use in St. Johns County, they immediately use the term epidemic.
Oh, for sure. It is an epidemic.
And that's not a term that, people in government, for the most part, say what you will, and people have negative sense of people in government and politics, but whatever. But they usually don't throw that word around too willy-nilly, you know what I mean?
It's a cautious word because you don't want to put people in a panic, right?
Yeah, exactly. And what what both Sheriff Shore and Commander Mulligan taught me was that I said, yes, we do have a problem with everything from, synthetic heroin to oxy to, to obviously cocaine use and the like. He said, but one of the biggest challenges we have are suburban moms in Palencia and Kensington and World Golf Village and County Road 210 who may have an issue with their knees or what have you. They have Oxycontin for a brief period of time that's prescribed, and then they form an addiction to it. And then, within 7 or 8, 9 months afterwards, they're having to go on the street to get heroin.
Absolutely. And in fact, if you were to open our doors and talk to our patients, you'll find that a lot of our patients look like everyone else in the neighborhood, and they're all struggling with some aspect. Now, in our case, and what you're referring to is that significant issue of chronic pain. And so chronic pain is a prevalent issue, and we're currently living in a culture where it's very difficult for people to sometimes manage that chronic pain through what we call non-intoxicating modalities. And so they'll resort to opiates and other types of medications to help them cope. And unfortunately, your body can't withstand that for a long period of time. So you end up becoming almost desensitized to it. You end up having to take more and more of it. What we find interesting that happens at Lakeview is that we've got clients that come in that say they suffer from great deals of chronic pain. They're, coming out on a 10 on the scale of the chronic pain index. But once we pull them off of their opiates, they find out that their pain wasn't as bad as they thought it was, that it was the medication that exacerbated the pain.
Wow.
And so we have to help them learn that they can learn how to manage the pain level that they have without needing to take intoxicants. And let me tell you, that is not an easy thing to do.
I bet that has to be very, very tough.
It is. It's very difficult because people have lived for a long time with their opiates and they felt like that's a great coping mechanism. Obviously, it's not, because that's why they end up in our program. So
that's Gina Thorne once again with Lakeview Health. And both Sheriff Shore and Commander Mulligan went on to say that, it's to your point, it's hard to imagine the person that you see at the Publix, that you see walking around Target on US 1, they could very, very easily be addicted to synthetic heroin or heroin. And the path is not going to be something that you can be incredibly judgmental about. We always have this image of, I guess, from TV, that they're in some back alley and they've made a series of bad choices.
Right.
These are people that just had medical procedures. They found a way to deal with the pain, and then the prescriptions ran out.
Right.
And the other point that law enforcement here in St. Johns County makes is that, on the good side of things, I guess, there's been a major effort in Florida over the last 3 years to shut down all the, quote, pill mills.
Correct.
A lot of docs that, that were maybe not even docs, they were just operating a bunch of clinics and they were just doling out Oxycontin. A lot of those, including here in St. Johns County, have been shut down.
Yep.
And these folks, they were basically made to go cold turkey. And so they go out, and what I didn't realize, and you know this so much better than I do, Gina, that to get things like heroin is just apparently very easy to do.
It is. And it's funny, it's incredibly easy, but if you were to ask me how to do it, I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't either. Our heads are so far in the sand.
I think so. I think if we really needed it, we'd probably figure it out creatively, but the reality is that it's available. And that's the scary part. It's available.
Younger law enforcement officers that I've had in here in the last 6 months or so, I had the same question for them. I said, I know it's prevalent. I don't underestimate the challenge of the issue, but I said, really, if you pulled a gun on me right now and said, Kevin, you have 30 minutes to go buy me some pot, I could not get it.
Nope, me neither.
And they laughed at me. They said, you know what? I think in my uniform, I could get it in 1 minute or less.
Well, and to their point, of course, that's their lifestyle. They probably see it a whole lot more. I think you being, in radio, it might be a little bit more difficult for you to find it. But all that being said, for those of you that are listening, it's something that's very, very serious. And so when we look at the nature of this disease and we look at the people people that are, living next door to us or living in our own homes, we have an opportunity to help them. We have an opportunity to get them the services and the resources that they need. And so with Lakeview, we believe that we're that solution. And so please don't hesitate to call, even if you're not sure. There are other ways to cope with those issues of chronic pain, and if they're struggling with other what we call co-occurring disorders like depression or anxiety or bipolar, which oftentimes can precipitate addiction and use of narcotics, we have the ability to help people learn how to deal with their mental health issues without needing to take medications and other intoxicants. So please give us a call at 866-316-5113 or look us up online at lakeviewhealth.com and learn more about this thing called addiction, because I will tell you that recovery is possible. People live every day in recovery. They're doing amazingly well. They have full lives. They no longer consider themselves a drain on society, and we can make that happen.
Yeah, it is really the first day of the rest of their lives when they check into Lakeview Health,
Sure.
And I know a lot of people will have the immediate reaction, we're sorry that, Mrs. Smith or or Susie had to go into rehab, or your child had to go into rehab. And family members, loved ones, friends of those who enter rehab and then are successful for a few days, and then it turns into weeks and months. They're the happiest they've ever been in years.
Oh, for sure.
Because
they get their child back.
Yeah, the path to recovery is underway. So that's what you're helping people with. When you make sure they know about Lakeview Health or tell them to make this no-charge phone call, you're getting them started on what could be some of the best years they've had in a long, long time. 866-316-5113. That toll-free number again here locally. Once you can speak with them, it's not going to cost you a dime. They'll answer any questions that you have at Lakeview Health about drug and alcohol addiction treatment. 866-316-5113. We'll be back with Gina Thorne. We're live in St. Augustine. Thought that was a good song to play. The Pointer Sisters and Yes We Can, kind of a positive message. There may be some of you out there who have friends, family members, and others who are dealing with drug and alcohol addiction. It is an epidemic here in St. Johns County and Greater St. Augustine, and there is a path to help, and it's right here in our neck of the woods. Lakeview Health, one of the country's leading places for drug and alcohol addiction recovery. And, of course, you can contact them right now. Toll free. I'll give you this number, 866-316-5113. They'll answer questions like, well, hey, how much is it going to cost? What does insurance cover? What's going to happen? How quickly can I get in? Or how quickly could my loved one get in? What are interventions all about? How does that happen? And they'll answer all those questions and work with you on the phone, and it won't cost you anything. It helps to get the process started, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And again, if you're curious about that and you're not prepared to make a phone call, certainly check us out online at lakeviewhealth.com. And we have the ability to answer most, if not all, of your questions. If you can't see those on the website, we certainly encourage you to give us a call. I want to talk for a little bit about this concept of, what happens when somebody goes to treatment, because there's always that fear of, I must be going into a lockdown facility and they're going to strap me into a bed and I'm going to detox and I'm going to be miserable. And
we've seen it all on TV.
Right. And so what we want people to know is that that's not what we do at Lakeview.
Right.
When you come into our facility, you actually come into a place that doesn't even look like a hospital. It's warm, it's therapeutic, it's safe. For both men and women. And ultimately, the goal is for us to help you feel that you are worthy, because I know a lot of people out there that are listening don't feel that they're worthy of good treatment. Everyone is worthy of good treatment. And we honor that. And we want people to know when they come to us, our goal is to help you find yourself again, help you find your family again, help you find your career again and your purpose again. We call that, finding your true north. So yes, we want to make sure that you're getting off all of these intoxicants, all the drugs and alcohol that have, wreaked havoc on your body for so long. But recovery is more than just about the absence of the drugs. It's also about a lifestyle change. It's about looking at a change in pattern of behavior. It's finding new friends that are going to be supportive of this new lifestyle. It's understanding that, yes, you've made mistakes in the past, but to learn how to forgive yourself. Forgiveness is a big deal. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves every day. And when you've made a lot of decisions that have compromised other people in your life, you've got a lot of guilt and shame. And so we work on those issues. We help you realize that a lot of that's the disease that compromised that. We want to make sure you understand that you are a functional member of society and that it's there. We just need to help you get to that point. So a lot of different moving parts to what we do at our facility. And we know that it works because we've been doing it now for 15 years. And we've had a tremendous impact, not just on the individual, but it's been a ripple effect to the entire family. We've had families that have come back who have been able to say, you have helped us break this intergenerational cycle of addiction. And we feel like we're finally a family again. And I can't tell you how proud I am to be a part of that team and working with such tremendous staff to make that happen.
Yeah, because what a tremendous change in a family's dynamic when that does happen. And you encounter, and of course, there's so many people who have finished successfully with Lakeview Health who've gone on to lead great lives. And for those people, they look back 10 years ago at the period of addiction and they know those are dark times, but boy, they're so happy that they've gotten beyond it.
You can actually just check us out on our Facebook page, and you can read the stories of all of our alumni and our families that talk about how we've touched and made a difference in their lives. And so we know that testimonials and reviews are very important, and so we really want people to take the time to listen and read on what has been successful in the past, because, again, we want to dispel this myth that getting treatment is not about a medical issue. In fact, we want people to understand that it's a holistic approach. It's a body, mind, and spirit approach. While we do address the medical aspects of getting you off the narcotics and we address the psychiatric issues, we're also addressing the psychological issues, the spiritual deficits. We're helping people understand that wellness is such a big part of recovery. We have this beautiful 10,000 square foot wellness center that is fully staffed by trained professional trainers who work with you at what level you're at so that you can start building in wellness practices to substitute for the addictive behaviors that you've been doing for so long. So we're a full body approach. It's not just about the absence of the drugs.
There you go. Well, you can learn more by going to lakeviewhealth.com. That's lakeviewhealth.com, and also call anytime at 866-316-5113. That's 866-316-5113. We're live in St. Augustine with Gina Thorne from Lakeview Health, and we'll be right back.
Sunday morning, up with the lock. I think I'll take off. You just have to wait. She said, trust, give it time. No matter how long it takes, you can't hurry love. No, you just have to wait.
Diana Ross with a lot of help from the Supremes here on 103.9. Hey, we play the greatest songs of all time. We do it 24 hours a day, and we do it at 103.9 and AM Radio 1170. We also do it online at staugustineradio.com. 24 minutes now before 10 o'clock, 85 degrees on our way up to a high today of 94 degrees and only a 20% chance of rain maybe at some point this afternoon. Gina Thorne is with us from Lakeview Health. She's live with us here in the studio helping us play the music. And, of course, if you know someone in your circle of friends, family member, workmate, somebody that maybe you work with who says, you know what, they have a child or a loved one or a sibling who's struggling with drugs and alcohol and they don't really know what to do, because I think that's something that we hear a lot from people. You know, I don't know what to do.
Right.
Well, the first step is to call Lakeview Health, 866-316-5113. It's not going to be any sort of a high-pressure sales experience. They're just going to answer questions that you have, and it won't cost your friend, your loved one, it won't cost them anything. And they may, at that point, learn about an interesting approach that Lakeview Health takes, which is to be conscious of people's gender, right? Because it does impact this whole thing.
It sure does. It's very interesting. In the last 2 months or so, we've actually moved to become what we call gender responsive, where we've separated the men and women intentionally, because we know that men and women respond to treatment differently. Men come into treatment for very different reasons than women do. Let's talk for a minute about what women are experiencing. So a lot of our women that come into treatment really struggle with self-care. They struggle with issues around trauma. They're ones that are typically the primary caregivers of their children, oftentimes feeling a lot more of the burden and stigma of having this disease, and so less likely to talk about it. And so what we find is that when we're creating a treatment program, we want them to feel like there is a sense of worthiness when they come in. We want them to remember that while that's the first thing they neglect, we want to help rebuild that issue of self-care for them. And then we really do deep dives into the trauma that typically helps or that typically contributes to their addiction. And so we actually have a terrific program that was founded by an international clinician named Dr. Stephanie Covington that looks at helping women recover. We look at all the sociological issues, the relational issues, the trauma issues that often affect women. so that we can really respond to women in a different way than what we would do for men. And it also allows women to be more honest with each other. Women really struggle with relationship when they're in active addiction, particularly with other females. So when you build a community of women where they are being encouraged to help find healthy relationships with other women, it helps support their long-term recovery. And the same with men. Men have a hard time making themselves vulnerable. We call it sort of a brotherhood. So with this new gender responsive program where men are working together in treatment, we're creating an opportunity for them to work at healthy relationships with other men, addressing issues like anger management, again, relationships, all of those things that oftentimes get neglected in the active addiction.
Wow. Help me understand, too, Gene. I know everyone is different. Everyone has all sorts of different challenges. But typically, how long will someone stay in rehab at Lakeview Health?
At Lakeview, we typically request and encourage a 6 to 9 week stay with us, which might feel like a long time for some folks because they're thinking, there's no way I'm going to take time out from my life. I've got too many responsibilities. But what we try to remind folks is that disease, again, can be fatal. And if we don't interrupt that disease and if we don't get it under control, if we don't learn how to develop new coping skills, which oftentimes involves being in a structured living environment for a period of time, that it will create additional havoc over a long period. So our goal is to offer you an opportunity to take a time out, really learn about new ways to deal with life's challenges because we all have them. It's not going away. We just need to learn how to cope with them differently. So we try to create what we call an incubator where they're eating and breathing and sleeping recovery. We have clinicians, trained clinicians that work in both addiction and psychiatric to really help the individual learn how to do daily skill building, learning how to cope with things like memory retention. We have this wonderful program called My Brain Solutions, where we actually, if you heard of luminosity, where I think we all probably could benefit from that from time to time.
No kidding.
But when you're in active addiction, sometimes the memory retention piece is big. So if you're coming into our program, we're going to help train you on learning about memory recall and helping you identify ways for you to help contribute to your recovery. A lot of people come out of treatment and they forget things very easily, even though they're no longer using, and it may have a direct impact on your employment. If you continue to not turn the fryer off and you're at McDonald's, people are going to wonder if you're just incompetent. Well, it's not about incompetence. It's about how your brain is just being rewired. So being at Lakeview for a period of time, there's a reason behind it. And we know that by taking that time out and being with us for that period of time has a lifelong impact in a good way.
And indeed, and I'm not going to in any way pretend to be an insurance expert, but a lot of insurance coverages do provide for, close to that period of time in terms of coverage anyway.
Right, exactly. So we work very closely with insurance providers to assist in making sure that you have financial support. We know that can be a hardship for some folks. And so our trained staff in our intake department will work with you to let you know what the cost will be before you even come into the facility. And so we take down your insurance, we verify your insurance, we let you know what would be your out-of-pocket contribution. And then, of course, our goal is to work with you and the insurance provider to let them know that there's an acute issue happening here and it needs to be addressed in our type of facility. And our staff will work with those insurance providers to let them know that. So it's a consistent level of communication with providers. And now with parity, the access to treatment is more available, where before it wasn't available. So we can't use the excuse anymore that people can't access treatment because many insurance plans now have built-in policies to help support people get treatment.
Good stuff. Lots of good information, obviously, and you can get information that's tailored specifically to your situation by calling this toll-free number at Lakeview Health, 866-316-5113. Once again, here in Northeast Florida, 866-316-5113. And, of course, always online at lakeviewhealth.com. I know it's hard to remember all this stuff. A lot of you are driving around right now, so we're going to put all this up on our Facebook page here in the next 20 minutes or so. So whenever you get to a place, you can pull us up on Facebook and get all the information that you need. We'll be back to wrap things up with Gina Thorne. Stay tuned. Climax Blues Band here on 103.9. Couldn't get it right, and I think a lot of folks that are struggling with drug and alcohol addiction, sometimes they have those self-confidence issues, right?
Oh, yeah. We have a lot of self-esteem issues of folks coming in. When you're told over and over again that you're a failure and that you're a drain on society and that you keep making the same
mistakes. Might as well just do drugs, right? Because I'm a loser anyway.
Absolutely. And it's important for people to know that when you come to our program, we meet you where you're at. We recognize that, you probably come to the table with a whole lot more shame and guilt, that we're not going to put that on you. Our goal is to help you see that there's an opportunity for recovery and know that, we can see past that. We can see past that and help you get to a place where you no longer feel like you can't be successful.
Yeah. One of the key things I think for folks out there to realize is how, drug and alcohol addiction impacts all families, regardless of their socioeconomic status. This is not something that's restricted to particular neighborhoods. As we indicated, if you're just joining us earlier, we've had people from St. Johns County law enforcement in here saying we have, quote, an epidemic of prescription med abuse in places like Palencia and Kensington and World Golf Village. So that's where, we have just as many problems there. And we were talking off the air about, a movie that speaks to that. But really, people need to understand that when you walk into the Publix, probably, every 10th person is dealing with drug and alcohol addiction.
Yeah, or they're in recovery, or they've lived, they've lived
to tell the tale.
Absolutely. So it's one of those things where we can't take it for granted. And, you can take the roof off of any one of these, homes in our neighborhoods and you will find addiction there. And,
yes.
And so it's important for people to recognize it and not be afraid to talk about it. I think that's one of the biggest barriers and challenges that we face, is that we're too afraid to say, well, that's not my family member, or that's not my place, and that needs to stay within the home. Well, at some point, that person's going to get in a car and drive, and it could be your family member that is impacted by it, or they end up going to a job that impacts your welfare from your bank account situation. So it's really important that we realize that this isn't a community issue. This is an epidemic, as we talked about before, and everyone has a role to play in helping address this addiction. So, and then also know that recovery is possible. And I think I can't stress that enough, because we have a lot of people out there that are talking about the collateral damage from this disease. You hear about it a lot on the news and in the radio, and you hear about these celebrities that relapse over and over again. And so we think, well, that's just not possible. Recovery is not possible, and it's absolutely possible. Some of our most successful people that we have in our own community are in recovery and living a life that is a second chance. And so we want people to know that it is absolutely possible. So please give us a call. If you know someone that's struggling, 866-316-5113. If you may know someone, or if you yourself are struggling and you need help, we ask you to please give us a call. We have trained staff. Some of them are in recovery who can actually relate to what you're going through, can connect with your pain and your suffering, and understand what it takes to get you into treatment. And then, of course, if you aren't sure and you have questions, visit us online at lakeviewhealth.com.
Yeah, if you didn't join us last week, or weren't listening to the radio last Friday, Gina brought in some great folks who are part of the professional team, part of her team at Lakeview Health, and they were both individuals who were very kind to share their story of drug and alcohol addiction. But they're also both they were both people that were well on the path to recovery, had been for years. And one thing I took away from it, and I told lots of people about it in subsequent days after they were here, because they both incredibly impressed me. And they were very flippant about it. It's like, well, yeah, I went through it. Now I'm fine. Everything's good. This is the focus on my job, my life. Everything's going well. I'm married, this, that, and the other. But it's like, I was sitting there really in awe of them, that they went through some horrific times.
Sure.
And yet they put it all back together again, and they have a really positive outlook.
Right,
so, I mean, you can, if you're somebody out there and you know somebody who's going through drug and alcohol addiction, really, there are amazing case studies of people who have successfully finished the program at Lakeview Health and really have put all this stuff in their rearview mirror.
Agreed. And we know that if you're sitting there today and you don't feel like you can do it again, you've maybe tried it once or twice or three times in various different ways, it is possible. It is possible. This disease is not easy to kick, and we know that that's part of the issue, and you can't do it alone. You just can't. We ask the family members to also recognize that they can't do it alone. They're going to need help. This disease affects the entire family. It's not just the individual. You can't just send someone to treatment and say, fix my loved one, and I'm going to go back to the way it was before. All of us have a role to play in this recovery journey. And so when your loved one goes to treatment, we encourage you as the family member to go to treatment. We ask you to find a family therapist or connect to an Al-Anon meeting or identify with people who might have gone through this program before so that they can help you, because the entire family will change. It's absolutely going to happen, whether you want it to or not. Your loved one's going to come home, and you may be practicing the same behaviors, and they're going to be different, and it's going to be challenging. So everyone needs to get on the same page.
Well, great advice. And, of course, if you have any additional questions, and I'm sure you do, we would encourage you to contact Lakeview Health through the website at lakeviewhealth.com. That's lakeviewhealth.com, or obviously they can call 866-316-5113. And there are counselors and people that are standing by. They'll take your call. It won't cost you a dime. 866-316-5113. If you're driving, I know it's impossible to write this stuff down, so just know that we've put it all up on our Facebook page, too, at WSOS Radio, the phone number and the website. Gina Thorne, as always, thank you for some great information. Thank you for all your time this morning.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, WSOS. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and safe travels.